The terraforming machines had promised warmth, but Maya's breath still clouded in front of her face as she trudged through Kepler 186f's first artificial winter. The colony's environmental engineers called it a success. The planet's atmosphere now held enough oxygen to breathe and enough moisture for snow. But at 13, Maya mostly noticed how the cold crept through her thermal suit's seams and how alien everything still felt, even after 8 months of calling this place home. She wasn't supposed to be this far from the settlement's perimeter. Her mother, Dr. Sarah Chen, had been clear about the dangers of exploring alone. But Maya had spotted something unusual in the geologics scan data while helping in the lab. A pattern of energy signatures that pulsed like a heartbeat beneath the crystalline frost formations in Grid Sector 7. The mining corporation's massive drills loomed in the distance, perpetually chewing through the planet's crust in search of rare minerals. Their constant rumble had become the colony's background noise, a sound Maya had learned to tune out until today. As she approached the coordinates from her scan, the vibrations felt different, discordant, almost painful. A flash of blue light caught her eye. Not the artificial glare of mining equipment, but something organic, like bioluminescence. Maya switched off her suit's external lights and waited for her eyes to adjust. There, in a hollow beneath a shelf of translucent ice, something was glowing. "Hello," she whispered, immediately feeling foolish. Nothing on Kepler 186f had shown signs of sentient life. That's why the mining corporation had chosen it. The planet was supposed to be merely a rich source of minerals, empty of any moral complications. The glow pulsed once, weakly. Maya edged closer, her handheld scanner forgotten at her hip. The light seemed to be coming from a crystalline formation, unlike any she'd seen in her mother's geological surveys. It had a structure that seemed almost deliberate, with facets that spiraled in impossible geometries. As she watched, the crystal's light dimmed further, and Maya felt something she couldn't explain. A sensation of pain that wasn't her own. Without thinking, she reached out toward it. The moment her gloved hand made contact, her mind exploded with images. Vast networks of crystal veins running through the planet's crust, carrying energy like blood vessels. Ancient beings of light tending to these pathways, maintaining a balance older than human civilization. And then the drills coming, cutting through the sacred geometry, disrupting patterns that had taken millennia to grow. Maya gasped and stumbled backward. The crystalline being, for she now knew without doubt that it was alive, flickered weakly. Its light pattern shifted in a way that somehow conveyed both ancient wisdom and desperate vulnerability. It was dying, she realized, wounded by the mining operation's careless invasion of its domain. "I want to help," she said aloud, fighting back tears. "Please, show me how." The response came not in words, but in another flood of images. A map of energy lines, places where the crystal networks could still be repaired, and a warning. The mining corporation's latest project, Operation Deep Strike, would drill directly into a nexus point, a place where multiple energy pathways converge. If they breached that chamber, the damage would cascade through the entire system. Maya's mind raced. She couldn't move the crystal being. Its roots ran deep into the planet's crust. But maybe she could protect it, find a way to heal it. Her mother's research team had been developing new applications for their bioregenerative technology, meant to accelerate the terraforming process. If she could adapt that somehow. A distant rumble made her jump. The drills were moving, their massive treads carving new scars into the frozen ground. Maya looked at the wounded guardian, its light now barely visible. "I'll come back," she promised. "I'll find a way to help. Just, please hold on." The crystal's glow pulsed once more, and Maya felt a gentle touch in her mind. Gratitude mixed with urgency. As she reluctantly turned back toward the settlement, she realized her life had irrevocably changed. She was no longer just a colonist's daughter, but perhaps the only human who knew Kepler 186f's true nature. Her mother had always taught her that science was about observation, about collecting data and forming hypotheses. But nothing in Maya's scientific education had prepared her for this moment. She had touched something ancient and alive, something that challenged everything the mining corporation claimed about this empty world. As she walked home through the artificial twilight, Maya began to plan. She would need access to her mother's lab, ways to smuggle equipment past security, and most importantly, a way to convince others of what she'd found without putting the Guardian at risk. The mining corporation had too much invested in Kepler 186 to simply take the word of a 13-year-old girl. Behind her, barely visible now, the crystal's light continued its ancient rhythm, a desperate holdout against the encroaching darkness. Maya squared her shoulders against the cold. She had work to do, and not much time to do it. 3 days into her secret, Maya had learned that ancient crystal beings could be surprisingly expressive. The Guardian, which she'd started calling Lux in her research notes, communicated through pulses of light that shifted in color and intensity. Blues meant calm or healing, amber signaled warning or urgency, and deep purple conveyed what Maya could only interpret as wisdom or memory. She sat cross-legged in the ice hollow, her tablet propped against her knee, recording the patterns. Her mother's bioregenerative samples were arranged in a careful grid around Lux's base, each vial glowing with modified bacteria designed to repair damaged organic matter. None had shown much effect yet, but Maya refused to give up. The mining corp announced another expansion today. She told Lux, watching as its light dimmed to a concerned indigo. They're calling it Phase 2 of Operation Deep Strike. 3 new drill sites, all deeper than before. She pulled up the geological survey map she'd copied from her mother's files, holding it where Lux could scan it with its sensory facets. The crystal's response was immediate, a burst of amber light so intense Maya had to shield her eyes. Images flooded her mind. A vast chamber deep below the surface, its walls lined with crystals that pulsed in harmony, channeling energy upward through the planet's crust. The mining corporation's planned drill sites formed a triangle around this sacred space. "They don't know," Maya whispered. "They can't see what you're showing me." But she hesitated, her fingers tracing the tablet's screen. "Maybe I can help them see." She'd been working on an interface, trying to translate Lux's light patterns into data that her mother's scientific instruments could understand. If she could prove that these energy signatures were more than random geological phenomena, maybe the mining operation would have to stop. A flicker of movement at the hollow's entrance made her freeze. Security drones often patrolled this sector, their sensors sweeping for unauthorized personnel or unusual energy readings. Maya quickly activated the deflector screen she'd rigged from salvaged parts, holding her breath as the drone's scanning beam passed overhead. When it was gone, Lux's light shifted to a concerned azure. The Guardian had grown protective of her, something that still amazed Maya, despite their days of interaction. Here was a being that had existed for perhaps millions of years, yet it worried about a human child's safety. "I'm okay," she assured it. "But we need to work faster. Those new drill sites." She consulted her tablet again, running calculations. "They'll reach the convergence point in less than 2 weeks." Lux's response was unexpected. Instead of amber warning pulses, its light shifted to a deep, resonant purple. Maya felt knowledge pouring into her mind. The Guardian wasn't alone. There were others, dormant or weakened, scattered across the planet's crust. Each one a node in an ancient network, maintaining the energy flows that kept Kepler 186 alive. "A system," Maya breathed, understanding dawning. "You're all part of a planetary system." She began typing frantically, trying to capture everything Lux was showing her. The crystal beings weren't just sentient individuals. They were components of a vast, living mechanism that regulated the planet's core energy. The mining corporation's drills weren't just threatening one species. They were dismantling the machinery of an entire world. A sudden tremor shook the hollow, stronger than the usual drill vibrations. Lux's light flickered in distress, and Maya felt its pain as if it were her own. She scrambled to check her instruments, and her heart sank. The mining corporation had started early. Phase 2 was already beginning. "We're running out of time," she said, gathering her equipment with shaking hands. "But I think I know what to do next." She'd been avoiding the obvious solution, afraid of the consequences. But now there was no choice. "I have to tell my mother. All of it." Lux's light pulsed in agreement, but there was something else in its pattern, a warning. Maya wasn't the only one who'd noticed the Guardian's energy signatures. Her recording devices had picked up increased scanning activity from the mining corporation's security systems. They were looking for something, methodically sweeping the area with increasingly sophisticated sensors. As if to confirm her fears, another drone buzzed past, this one flying lower than the last. Its scan patterns were different, more focused, more thorough. Maya huddled behind her deflector screen, watching its lights paint patterns on the ice walls. "I'll be back tomorrow," she whispered to Lux once the drone had passed. "And I'll bring help. Real help." She reached out to touch the crystal's surface one last time before leaving, and felt its energy hum beneath her fingers. Trust, determination, and something like hope. The trek back to the settlement was tenser than usual. Maya spotted 3 more security drones, all running new search patterns. She kept to the shadows of ice formations, grateful for the planet's perpetual twilight. Her mother would still be in the lab at this hour, working on the terraforming project's next phase. Maya had memorized the access codes months ago, but she'd never used them without permission before. As she approached the settlement's perimeter, Maya ran through the evidence she'd collected. Energy readings, light pattern recordings, and most importantly, the interface she'd built to translate Lux's communications into data that scientific instruments could verify. It would have to be enough. Because if she couldn't convince her mother quickly, Operation Deep Strike would destroy something irreplaceable. Not just Lux, but an entire planetary system that humans hadn't even known existed. The lab's lights glowed ahead, and Maya squared her shoulders. She was about to break countless rules, and probably several colonial laws. But sometimes, she reflected, the most important scientific discoveries required breaking a few rules. She just hoped her mother would understand before it was too late. Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the data scrolling across her lab's main display, her expression shifting from skepticism to disbelief to something Maya couldn't quite read. The interface Maya had built pulsed with recorded patterns of Lux's communications, each frequency mapped to corresponding energy signatures in the planet's crust. "You built this?" her mother finally asked, adjusting her glasses. "And you've been collecting this data for how long?" "Almost a week," Maya admitted, fidgeting with her tablet. "Mom, I know I broke protocol. I know I shouldn't have been out there alone. But you have to see what this means. The crystal beings, they're not just alive. They're essential. The whole planet's energy system depends on them." Another tremor shook the lab, stronger than the last. Equipment rattled on shelves, and the lights flickered briefly. Dr. Chen's face hardened as she pulled up the mining operation's latest drilling data. "They've accelerated the timeline," she muttered. Phase 2 wasn't supposed to start for another week. She turned to Maya, her scientific detachment cracking slightly. "Show me everything. From the beginning." Maya took a deep breath and started the full data playback. The lab's holographic display filled with streams of information, energy readings, temperature fluctuations, and most importantly, the complex patterns of light that represented Lux's attempts to communicate. She explained how she'd first discovered the Guardian, the images it had shared, and the desperate race against time they now faced. "The convergence chamber," she finished, projecting a 3D map of the drill sites. "If they breach it, the damage will cascade through the entire network. And it's not just about Lux. These beings maintain some kind of balance in the planet's core. We could be looking at planetary-scale consequences." Dr. Chen was silent for a long moment, her fingers moving rapidly over her console as she cross-referenced Maya's data with her own research. "These energy signatures," she said finally, "they match anomalies we've been detecting in the terraforming process, variations we couldn't explain." She looked at her daughter with new eyes. You may have discovered why our atmospheric stabilization efforts keep fluctuating. A sharp buzz from the lab's security system made them both jump. Through the reinforced windows, Maya could see more drones than usual patrolling the perimeter, their search beams cutting through the artificial twilight. They're looking for the source of the energy signatures, Maya said. I think they've detected Lux, but they don't know exactly where. The lab door slid open with a hydraulic hiss. Maya's heart nearly stopped as Marcus Vale, the mining corporation's head of security, stepped in. Two corporate enforcers flanked him, their faceplates inscrutable. Dr. Chen, Vale said smoothly, we've detected some unusual readings from your lab. Given the sensitive nature of Operation Deep Strike, I'm sure you understand our concern. His eyes flickered to Maya, then to the data displays. Interesting research you're conducting. Maya watched her mother's spine straighten, years of academic authority settling over her like armor. This is a restricted research facility, Mr. Vale. Your security clearance has been upgraded, Vale interrupted, holding up an authorization chip. Direct order from corporate headquarters. We've been tracking some very unique energy signatures in Sector 7. Signatures that could represent a significant discovery. His smile didn't reach his eyes. A discovery that by colonial law belongs to the corporation. Maya felt cold that had nothing to do with the planet's artificial winter. She'd been naive to think they could keep Lux hidden forever. The Guardian's energy signature was too distinctive, too powerful to go unnoticed for long. Maya, her mother said quietly, initiate Protocol Omega. Maya's fingers flew across her tablet before Vale could react. Throughout the lab, data began disappearing from screens, transferring to secure servers that only her mother could access. Vale's enforcers stepped forward, but Dr. Chen held up a hand. That data represents months of atmospheric research, she said calmly. Proprietary terraforming algorithms. If you'd like to explain to corporate headquarters why you interfered with their multi-billion credit environmental stability project, be my guest. Vale's face darkened. We know there's something out there, Doctor, something valuable, and we will find it. He glanced at Maya again, his expression calculating. Children shouldn't play in restricted areas. It's dangerous. After they left, Maya released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Mom, we have to do something. They'll find Lux, and when they do, they'll try to exploit it. Dr. Chen finished. She was already pulling up new screens, her fingers moving with urgent purpose. But they've made a critical mistake. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. They assumed I'd choose the corporation over the truth. She turned to Maya. Tell me more about how you communicate with this Guardian. We have work to do, and not much time to do it. Outside, the drilling machines rumbled louder, their vibrations setting Maya's teeth on edge. She knew Lux could feel every bite of those massive drills, every violation of the ancient crystal network. But for the first time since she discovered the Guardian, Maya felt real hope. Her mother believed her. And Dr. Sarah Chen had a reputation for solving impossible problems. They worked through the night, combining Maya's insights about the crystal network with her mother's deep understanding of planetary systems. They had to find a way to prove the Guardian's importance to the corporation, to make them understand that their profits meant nothing if they destroyed the very thing that made the planet viable for colonization. As dawn's artificial light crept over the horizon, another tremor shook the lab, the strongest yet. Maya exchanged a worried look with her mother. Time was running out, and somewhere in the frozen darkness, Lux's light was growing dimmer. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of activity. Maya and her mother converted their lab into a command center, surrounded by holographic displays showing drill positions, energy readings, and the increasingly unstable patterns of the crystal network. Dr. Chen had called in every favor she had, quietly contacting other scientists who might support their findings. But it wasn't enough. They needed more time, and Operation Deep Strike wasn't waiting. Another 30 meters, Dr. Chen announced, studying the latest drilling data. At this rate, They'll reach the convergence chamber by midnight. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes matching Maya's own. Maya's tablet chimed with an alert she'd dreaded. Lux's energy signature was fluctuating wildly. "Mom," she said, her voice cracking. "I have to go to them. Something's wrong." Dr. Chen studied the readings, then nodded grimly. "Take the experimental stabilizer." "And Maya?" She gripped her daughter's shoulder. "Be careful. Vale's people are everywhere." The stabilizer was their latest creation, a fusion of terraforming technology and Maya's understanding of the crystal network. In theory, it could help strengthen Lux's failing energy patterns. In practice, they hadn't had time to test it properly. Maya slipped out through the maintenance tunnels, using routes she'd mapped during her earlier secret expeditions. The colony's artificial night was darker than usual, cloud cover blocking the distant sun, as if Kepler 186 FeV itself was bracing for what was coming. She found Lux's hollows surrounded by security drones, their sensors sweeping the area in tight patterns. The deflector screen wouldn't fool them for long, but she had to try. Maya waited for a gap in their search pattern, then darted forward, pressing herself against the ice wall. Lux's light was barely visible now, flickering between deep indigo and a sickly amber. The moment Maya touched the crystal surface, she understood why. The drilling had reached a critical support node in the network. With each bite of the massive machines, more energy pathways were being severed. "I'm here," she whispered, setting up the stabilizer. "Just hold on." The device hummed to life, its bioregenerative field expanding to envelope the Guardian. For a moment, Lux's light strengthened, shifting toward a healthier blue. But then another tremor hit. The worst yet. Maya was thrown against the ice wall as the ground heaved beneath her. Warning klaxons began blaring throughout the colony. Her tablet exploded with alerts. Massive energy spikes, structural instability warnings, and a message from her mother that made her blood run cold. They'd breached the outer chamber. Dr. Chen's voice crackled through. "Maya, get out of there now." But Maya couldn't move. Through her connection with Lux, she felt what was happening below. The drilling had created a cascade effect, destabilizing the entire crystal network. Energy that should have flowed smoothly through the planet's crust was now building up, seeking release. Lux's light pulsed urgently, sharing one last, desperate vision. Other Guardians, dozens of them, scattered across the planet, each one weakening as the network failed. And deeper below, in the convergence chamber itself, something was stirring, something ancient and powerful, responding to the threat to its world. Maya's fingers flew across her tablet, correlating the data. "Mom," she transmitted, "the crystal network. It's not just maintaining energy flow. It's containing something. The core. It's alive." "Get back to the lab," her mother replied, fear evident even through the static. "The corporation's calling an emergency evacuation. The drilling must have." The transmission cut off as another tremor shook the ground. Maya looked at Lux, their shared pain almost overwhelming. "I won't leave you," she said. But the Guardian's light pulsed with fierce determination, pushing a single message into her mind. Save them. Not just the colonists, Maya realized. Save all of them, human and Guardian alike. Because if the core entity fully awoke, if the ancient balance was completely destroyed, nobody would survive what came next. She grabbed the stabilizer and ran, tears freezing on her cheeks. Behind her, Lux's light grew stronger for a moment, as if gathering its remaining strength. Through their bond, Maya felt the Guardian reaching out to its kin, calling them to a final effort. The colony was in chaos when she reached it. Evacuation ships were warming up, their engines adding to the cacophony of alarms. Maya fought her way through panicked crowds to reach the lab, where her mother was arguing furiously with Vale and a group of corporate executives on the main screen. "You don't understand," Dr. Chen was saying. "Conventional evacuation won't be enough. The planet's core is." Another violent tremor cut her off. The lights flickered and died. leaving only the eerie glow of emergency systems. And through the lab's windows, Maya saw something that made her heart stop. Lines of blue light, spreading like luminescent veins through the ground. The Guardians were moving, she realized. All of them. Connecting, combining their remaining strength. But for what? "Mom," she said, grabbing her mother's arm. "I know what they're trying to do, but they'll need our help." Dr. Chen looked at her daughter, then at the corporate executives still shouting on the screen. Her decision took only a second. She cut the transmission mid-sentence and turned to Maya. "Tell me what you need." Outside, the ground continued to shake as ancient forces stirred beneath their feet. Maya pulled up the stabilizer schematics, her mind racing. They had minutes, maybe, to prevent a catastrophe. But maybe, just maybe, they could do more than prevent disaster. Maybe they could forge something entirely new. "We need to link our terraforming grid to their network," she said, "not to control it, but to support it. To help them contain what's below and restore the balance." She looked up at her mother. "We have to trust them, like they've trusted me." Dr. Chen was already moving, her fingers dancing across control panels. "I hope you're right," she said quietly, "because we're about to bet everything on your Guardian friends." Maya thought of Lux, still holding on in its icy hollow, still fighting to protect a world that humans had nearly destroyed through ignorance. "They won't let us down," she said. "We just have to give them a chance to show us a better way." The lab's emergency lights flickered as they worked, racing against time and physics and corporate greed. Above them, evacuation ships lifted into the artificial night. Below them, something ancient stirred, testing its bonds. And all around them, lines of light spread through the frozen ground as the Guardians of Kepler 186 prepared to reveal their true power. The lab's reinforced windows rattled as another shockwave rolled through the colony. Maya's fingers moved across her tablet with desperate speed, rerouting power from the terraforming grid while her mother reconfigured the main systems. Lines of blue light continued to spread through the ground outside, pulsing with increasing intensity. "Connection established," Dr. Chen announced, her voice tight with concentration. "Maya, the stabilizer readings." "Ready," Maya replied, watching the energy patterns align. "But Mom, there's something else happening." Through her bond with Lux, she could feel a gathering force. The Guardians weren't just linking their power, they were preparing for something unprecedented. Images flooded her mind. The crystal network lighting up like a vast circuit board, energy flowing not just between the Guardians but through them, transforming them. A deafening crack split the air. Through the lab windows, they watched in awe as massive crystal spires began emerging from the frozen ground, their surfaces rippling with patterns of light. The Guardians were revealing themselves, all of them, rising to the surface in a desperate gambit to save their world. "Impossible," breathed Vale's voice from the doorway. He stood there with his corporate enforcers, their weapons drawn but hanging useless at their sides, as they stared at the transformation happening outside. "The mineral wealth alone is nothing compared to what they're offering," Dr. Chen cut in sharply. "Look at the energy readings. The crystal network. It's not just containing the core's power. It's harnessing it, converting it." Maya felt a familiar presence touch her mind. Lux was closer now, their connection stronger than ever. The Guardians shared a vision of what could be. Humans and Guardians working together, using the crystal network to power not just mining operations, but entire civilizations. Clean, sustainable energy on a scale the corporation had never imagined. "They want to help us," Maya said, turning to Vale. "They always did. We just didn't know how to listen." Another tremor shook the lab, but this one felt different. Controlled, purposeful. The crystal spires were growing higher, their light synchronizing in complex patterns. Through the windows, Maya could see the few remaining colonists stopping their panicked evacuation, staring in wonder at the impossible scene. "The core entity," Maya explained, reading the data flowing through her tablet. The Guardians aren't just containing it anymore. They're communicating with it, teaching it to work with them and with us. Dr. Chen's screens confirmed it. The violent energy spikes were stabilizing, transforming into regular pulses that matched the crystal network's rhythm. The planet itself was coming into balance, finding a new harmony between its ancient powers and the technologies humanity had brought. If we withdraw the drills now, Dr. Chen said to Vale, if we work with the Guardians instead of destroying them, the potential is limitless. She gestured to her readings. Sustainable energy, advanced materials, scientific discoveries we can't even imagine yet. All of it clean, renewable, and mutually beneficial. Vale's corporate mask cracked slightly as he studied the numbers. Maya knew what he was seeing. Profit projections that would make the original mining operation look like a child's allowance. How? He demanded. How do we know they'll cooperate? Maya felt Lux's amusement at the question. The Guardian's presence was stronger now, more confident. Through their connection, Maya understood that this had always been possible, this convergence of human and Guardian potential. They had just needed someone young enough, open enough, to bridge the gap between worlds. Because they already are, she said, pointing to her screens. The crystal network was actively interfacing with their terraforming systems, refining and improving them. The planet's atmosphere was stabilizing faster than their most optimistic projections. They're not just ancient Guardians. They're teachers, waiting for students ready to learn. A final tremor rippled through the colony, gentle as a sigh. Outside, the crystal spires had stopped growing, their lights settling into a steady, peaceful rhythm. The evacuation sirens fell silent. In the sudden quiet, Maya could feel the change in the air, literally. The atmosphere was clearer, cleaner, as if the planet itself was breathing easier. Maya, her mother said softly. Look. Through the lab's windows, they could see colonists emerging from their shelters, moving cautiously toward the nearest crystal spire. Its light responded to their approach, shifting to welcoming blues and purples. Children pointed in wonder as patterns of light seemed to dance just for them. And there, at the edge of the colony, Maya saw Lux. The Guardian had transformed like its kin, no longer hidden in an icy hollow but rising proudly toward Kepler 186's artificial sky. Its light pulsed in greeting, sharing one last vision. A future where humans and Guardians work together, learning from each other, protecting their shared world. It's not an ending, Maya realized, smiling through tears of joy. It's a beginning. Dr. Chen placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder as they watched the colonists begin to integrate with their world's true nature. Vale was already speaking rapidly into his communicator, no doubt trying to spin this revolution into something the corporation could claim credit for. But it didn't matter. The truth was evident in the crystal spire's light, in the stabilized readings on their screens, and in the way the colonists' fear had transformed into wonder. A 13-year-old girl had broken protocol, trusted her instincts, and in doing so, had helped forge a bridge between two civilizations. The Guardians of Kepler 186f had waited eons for the right moment, the right connection. And in the end, it wasn't corporate might or scientific authority that made first contact. It was a child's willingness to listen, to trust, and to believe in something greater than herself. Ready for what comes next? Her mother asked. Maya nodded, feeling Lux's encouraging presence in her mind. There would be challenges ahead, protocols to establish, technologies to integrate, trust to build between two very different species. But for the first time since humans had arrived on Kepler 186f, they were truly ready to learn from their new home, rather than simply exploit it. Ready, she said, and meant it with all her heart. Outside, the crystal spires continued their gentle light show, welcoming their new partners in the great dance of creation. And deep below, at the planet's core, ancient powers settled into a new rhythm, content in the knowledge that their world was finally in harmony.